thank you so much for that very kind introduction. And let me say how delighted I am to be here today at Nazarbayev University. I've been hearing about this university now for several years, so it's a real pleasure to finally have a chance to come and to sit with all of you and to talk with you. I thought I would just make a few very brief opening remarks, and then I'd love to have a conversation with all of you and hear what all of you have to say. I'm responsible for a region that goes all the way from Kazakhstan in the north all the way to Sri Lanka and the Maldives in South Asia. And one of our most important objectives is to reach out to young people, because half of the population in the South and Central Asian region that I'm responsible for is under the age of 25. So, and I will say that except not in the country of Kazakhstan, but most of the leaders are over 75. So it's really important to talk to the young people and to get a real sense of what all of you are thinking and how we can interact with you more. I think in Kazakhstan, the statistic is about 44% under the age of 25. So you also have a very young population. And again, I think all of you kind of represent the future of Kazakhstan. So it's particularly important to listen to you and to hear what you have to say. I'm really happy to be here at this university in particular. Higher education in the United States has really been, I think, one of the foundations of America's success and one of the foundations of our ability to regenerate itself. We've gone through a number of crises in our time. I would say, for example, that in the late 1980s, when we had a terrible recession and a lot of people were worried about the future of the United States, and everybody was talking about Japan and the rise of Japan and so forth. And instead, we had the greatest period probably ever in terms of prosperity in the 1990s when President Bill Clinton was in office. And a very important part of that success was innovation and the innovation economy that we have. And a very important part of that innovation is our university system. And our university system is constantly reinventing itself, reaching out to find new partners such as your university, and most importantly of all, engaging in high-end research to meet the needs of the modern economy. And I see a lot of those very same attributes when I hear about all of the ambitious plans here at Nazarbayev University. 8 of your 10 international partners are American universities, and they're some of the best universities in the United States, which is a real tribute, I think, to the confidence they have in the future of this university. So I'm so proud to see that Harvard and Wisconsin and Carnegie Mellon and all of those universities that are really synonymous with excellence in the United States and synonymous with sort of leading edge technology are here and partnering with your university. And I think that bodes very well for the future of the university. It bodes very well for your future, and also I think for the future of your country. We've just finished 2 days of talks with your government on a wide range of issues. Kazakhstan is probably one of the most important countries in the entire South and Central Asian region for us. We have not only very encouraging cooperation at the bilateral level, but also we see Kazakhstan as a growing global and regional leader. Kazakhstan has been most recently the chairman in office of the Organization for the Security and Cooperation in Europe, and this year is also the head of the Organization for the Islamic Conference and will be chairing the summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So these are all extremely important regional organizations, and I think it's an extremely important time. I will come back to that in a minute. Just to kind of underline some of the things that we are working on with your government, just to give you a sense of the kinds of things that the government's working on. We had talks over the last 2 days that covered a huge wide range of issues. One of the big topics was Afghanistan, where your government is doing a great deal to help with the stabilization of Afghanistan. Your government force and your coalition that is there as part of the stabilization of Afghanistan. You have provided a lot of assistance to educate and provide training to young Afghans, which again is so important to the future of Afghanistan. And also a lot of the non-lethal supplies for our troops and for a lot of the other international troops come through Kazakhstan and then go on to Uzbekistan and others, and then into Afghanistan. So it's a very important role that your government plays, and one that we very deeply appreciate. But it's also a role that's in their interest as well, because none of us want to see the further destabilization of Afghanistan, because it could have very wide-ranging impacts. And I'd be very glad to come back to that. We also talked a lot about commercial and trade and investment and how we can develop that. There's already $20 billion of U.S. investment here. Most of it is in the private sector, in the oil and gas sector and private sector. But we'd like to explore how more we can do in the non-oil and gas sectors, because I think your president and your government want to diversify the economy of Kazakhstan, and I think there's there'll be a lot of opportunities. One of the things we discussed is your plans to accede to the World Trade Organization, which will, again, open up your economy, I think, and allow more companies to come in and take advantage not only of the market here in Kazakhstan, but also the wider regional markets, including access to the Russian market, which is, I think, an important opportunity. We also talked a lot about a lot of transnational threats that we are working on together. Counterterrorism, narcotics, all of these are things, many of them originate in Afghanistan or Pakistan, and we're cooperating very closely with your government to address those and to help it to protect itself against some of the threats that it faces. We're working on non-proliferation. Since your country's independence 20 years ago, your country has really been a leader in the area of non-proliferation. There's been sustained progress over that entire period, and it was one of the major topics of discussion over the last 2 days, how we can sustain that progress further and continue to benefit from the experience that your country has had, and also the leadership that it has provided at the regional and global level. We talked about science and technology, and an important part of the science and technology future will be your university, because a lot of the most important research that takes place in science and technology is taking place at the university level. So again, a lot of those American partners who will be coming in, I think, will help to really catalyze a lot of the research that's going to take place, and all of you, I think, will be the beneficiary of that. We also talked about human rights and about democratization. You have very important elections that are going to be coming up. First, in early April, for the presidential elections, and then parliamentary elections next year. And we talked a lot about how this is a really important time in the world. For the last 4 or 5 years or so, organizations like Freedom House that monitor the state of freedom around the world have documented that, in fact, political liberalization is on the decline in many parts of the world. And you've seen that in, for example, the Middle East, where there's been a reaction to that decline. There's been a reaction to the fact that many students and many young people feel frustrated that they don't have jobs, they don't have various kinds of political freedoms, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So I said to our friends in the government that democratization and political liberalization is not only important for Kazakhstan, but it's important for Kazakhstan to show and itself be a model for other countries in Central Asia and in the wider arena. And again, I'm glad to talk more about that. As I said earlier, I think this is a really important and exciting time as we watch the situation in the Middle East unfold. I spent the early part of my career, about 10 years in the Middle East, in Tunisia, in Egypt, in Algeria, and at that time, there were a lot of constraints, and in retrospect, it's easy to see that those changes were going to take place. I think many of us believed that those leaders would somehow find a way to hang on, and they did find a way to hang on for many years. But in the end, it came down to the fact that unresponsive governments. Governments were not responsive to the needs of their people, particularly to their young people. And places like Tunisia and Egypt had large numbers of unemployed people who were relatively well educated and were not able to find jobs. They were very frustrated by that. And part of the problem was that the governments hadn't opened up. There was not a sufficient market economy. Part of the problem was that in places like Tunisia, they had kept very, very strict control on political parties, on the media, on every form of political participation. And then there was a lot of corruption, a lot of very obvious corruption. And so that, of course, led to a lot of anger on the part of many people. And that was reflected in the streets and the people sort of revolution that you saw. It started in Tunisia and then quickly spread to Egypt and beyond. So this is a very profound change that's now taking place in the Middle East. And one of the messages that the United States has had for countries around the world is that they need to pay attention. They need to really watch what's going on there and to learn from the mistakes of those governments in the Middle East and try to get out in front of change and lead change. And I think your government is doing that. More needs to be done. But many other governments in Central Asia are not doing that. They've gone the other direction. They're actually tightened up a little bit on political liberalization because they fear that process. And so that's something that we talk a lot about with other friends in Central Asia. One of the most important things that we've been working on is social media. Social media played an incredibly important role both in Tunisia and Egypt, and it's something that under Secretary Clinton, the State Department has become very, very active in trying to use and as a method to connect with the people. And so we have, for example, we have a Facebook page in my bureau. The State Department has a Facebook page. We have various kinds of blogs. We have a one called DipNote. The Secretary herself does a lot of blogging. A lot of people do tweeting, not only in English, but in many, many other languages now. So we're really making active use of these social media to try to reach out to people that before we really didn't have the chance to really talk to. I hope that all of you can be friends of ours as well. We have our own Facebook page. We'd love to have you be part of the conversation and to listen again to what all of you think and how, what kind of programs we can pursue that would be of interest to you. We already do a lot of web chats and things like that, but again, it would be terrific to hear from you today and in the future. I'd also like to just tell you briefly an important thing that we're going to be doing later this year, probably in July, where we're going to have a special conference to promote women's empowerment here in Central Asia. We believe, not just because we have a woman Secretary of State, but we believe strongly in the importance of women's empowerment. Study after study has shown that if you educate women, that will have a profound multiplier effect on society. Women who have been educated tend to have fewer children. Women who have been educated tend to provide much more of their income to their families. And women who have been educated are such a good proponent of good governance and so many other positive trends. So we are strongly in favor of women's empowerment. And this conference that we're going to host in July in Bishkek will bring together women's leaders, mostly women's business leaders, but others as well, NGO leaders, to talk about lessons learned, best practices, and how they can not only get together in one sort of big network and share ideas and share best practices, but how we can start to use microcredit and other forms of empowerment tools to better help them to create jobs and to, again, to get mobilized and to promote the role of women in Central Asia. And again, I think that there's been a lot of progress in many of the countries in this area, so this is something that will be of great benefit to your region, and hopefully to Afghanistan as well. We're going to be bringing in many from Afghanistan. So I've thrown out a lot of some of the things that we're doing. And again, let me just say how happy I am to be here today, to talk to all of you and to hear from all of you. I'd be glad to take your questions or your comments on any subject that I raised or any other subject, because about